I'm Charles Cuvalier. I'm the superintendent on the George Washington Memorial Parkway. So we want to spend some time this evening, share with you where we're at, and then provide an opportunity for some question and answers as time allows. So with that, I'll get started and then we'll go from there. We're here to share, obviously, tonight the release of our Traffic and Safety Context Sensitive Solutions Assessment, essentially our report on the South Parkway. Go ahead, Aaron. So where we'd like to kind of frame the agenda tonight, we're going to orient yourselves to our priorities and actions, because that's what we do in terms of kind of where we spend our time, effort, and energy. Give a brief recap of the project, a few highlights to the report. We'll express that we're not going to give you a deep dive into every page of the report. It's over 300 pages long with a couple hundred pages of appendices. So we're going to orient you a little bit, and we'll discuss maybe opportunities from some additional dialogue in the future, talk about our next steps, and then again the opportunity for hearing your questions. The cover sheet you see on your left is the cover sheet to the report, which is on our website today. The park, you know, one of the things we've tried to do is take our strategic plan and drop it down a notch, if you will, to really make it how we can make the strategic plan real. And we've done that by creating 4 emphasis areas that frame our priorities and action handbook. What we're talking about tonight really centers on 2 of those emphasis areas, which is stewardship and partnership. In our stewardship, what we really are trying to do is seek out and consider input from our divisions and our partners as we make decisions that impact the park. And in our partnerships, we really want to embrace, collaborate, trust, and have some open communications with our partners to achieve our shared goals. And tonight's part of that. So we thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for the engagement you've had bringing us to this point. The next slide, I'm not going to read all the items that are listed here, but it does kind of give you a drill down of when you take our priorities and actions and you look at the specific things attached to them, our engagement with our communities, communicating with our partners, really looking to our visitor experiences, and improving or working on our deferred maintenance, collaborating with the park police on public safety issues. So this study and what comes out of this study hits on a number of things that we really do invest our staff's time, effort, and talent in accomplishing. Overall, where are we at on the project schedule? For those of you who have been with us since the beginning in spring of 2019, we started the analysis. We came out for some public comment in 2 different periods of this study in July of 2019 and then again in December. We spent the better part of the last year bringing the report to its completion. It took a little bit longer than we had planned. Those were simply some writer-editor production issues that we had. The report itself was substantively done several months ago, but we've just been trying to get it out the door from a production standpoint. So we're at where we're at today, releasing the report in its appendices to the public for your consumption, and what we hope is a reflection of what we heard from you throughout this study period. It's always good to go back and kind of remind ourselves of where we started, and that includes our study purpose. We did put this study together to really look at the parkway between the city of Alexandria and Mount Vernon, look at those 9 key intersections, incorporating transit, the bus stops, bicycle routes, looking at crash history, and points along the Mount Vernon Trail where it crosses and leads to the road. Overall purpose for this project was to respond to the community concerns about traffic safety. We really wanted to develop what we call context-sensitive safety solutions that are appropriate for a historic and scenic roadway that's a unit of the National Park Service. We also wanted to revisit prior safety studies and their recommendations to see if they carried forward or needed to be dismissed. Overall, the outcome of this report, there are really 4 E's when we look at solutions: engineering, education, enforcement, and emergency response. For the sake of this report, we have great relationships with our neighbors regarding and jurisdictions regarding emergency response. We didn't see anything there to delve into. So this report really focused on 3 of the 4 E's: the engineering, education, and enforcement solutions, to balance the needs of our visitors, pedestrians, cyclists, transit riders, and commuter traffic. And then secondly, the other outcome of this effort was really to give us as park managers and the team how we make critical decisions managing the roadway for modern use while honoring the intent of this historical design. When we talk about context sensitivity, we talk about the importance of the parkway being listed on the National Register of Historic Places and some of its key themes of honoring the legacy of George Washington. The road itself is a memorial, that is its designation. Originally the Mount Vernon Memorial Highway, now the George Washington Memorial Parkway. Providing recreational opportunities, connecting historic sites, scenic overlooks, memorials, monuments, and really the stories that connect those various locations. Maintaining its ceremonial entrance to Washington, D.C. Obviously, it's need to provide transportation and preserve views and vistas. The design of the road is intentional in framing up various views and vistas along the route itself. And as a reminder, a parkway is a park. It's attenuated, it's a thin park, but it's a park nonetheless with a road through it. So how do we maintain that park quality and characteristics in the visitor experience? When we asked for the community input and what was of concern for you, this was your sort of your top 10 list. Pedestrian safety, speed enforcement, as well as the high rate of vehicle speeds were two of the top 5. Some of the intersection geometry and design, the number of conflicts in making left turns, primarily in and out of adjacent neighborhoods, right? Side streets. Some intersection sightline issues, bicycle safety and access to the trail, the use of the parkway by commercial vehicles, which is prohibited except by permit, the lack of appropriate intersection traffic controls, and then the condition of the road itself with faded and lack of roadway markings. We got over 700 comments. The first round we did public comment. The second round we got about 160. So all told, you know, well over 850 comments of one sort or another. We did take all the suggestions that came from this effort, and we went through this kind of cascading or waterfalling approach to determine whether any of the concepts could carry forth as a recommendation. So one of the first filters we used were any treatments or recommendations that were outside the scope of the project. We had about 11 of those, just not in our jurisdiction or not within the scope of the project. The next one was context sensitivity. If a candidate alternative or concept was context sensitive, it moved forward. If it did not, it was removed from consideration. And then it was scored across these various attributes to give it some weighting, if you will, as to what might have the greater benefit for implementation. This is all in the study. Everything that you're being provided tonight is in the study. So you can get the graphic or the page right out of the study. When you look at the report, the way it's currently framed, you have the report itself, which is, like I said, around 300 plus pages, just over 300 pages. You have a series of appendices, A through I. A gives a pretty good photo montage of the existing conditions on the park and its various intersections that we looked at from Alexandria to Mount Vernon. There's if you're into traffic data, B through E really is the numbers, all the traffic data that was used to inform the project. Appendix F is traffic accident data, so looking at the collision data that was available. Appendix H are the build conditions. So they did some traffic analysis based upon some of the recommendations and what those build conditions would tell us. Appendix G looks at all the alternatives that were considered. Those that were underlined are those that were removed from further consideration. They didn't fall through the waterfalling test. As I shared before, there were about 89 of them that were evaluated, 11 that were outside scope, 30 that were removed, and 48 or so that were carried forward. So those are 48 unique or individual recommendations, some of which can apply across the entire study area, some which are more specific to one intersection or another. And then finally in Appendix I, there's some rough order of magnitude cost estimations for certain elements of the project. I guess I will note that part of our approach tonight, when we hit some of the highlights here, is that there's a lot of information in this report. I think people are going to need some time to kind of wade through it, kind of find what's of interest or note to them. And so I think we recognize that there may need to be tailored or more future discussions on this related to your group, the Citizens Association. I just park that idea now because we'll probably come back and visit that. We didn't envision tonight that we would walk you through each and every intersection and each and every recommendation. But there is one of the chapters in the study does get a summary, and it's one way to sort of orient yourself to what are some of the recommendations and findings that are there. And this is an excerpt of that table in the summary chapter. So it shows the intersection, in this case, Belhaven, Bellevue, 2-lane, and Morningside Lane. Provides a number of proposed treatments that could occur. In this case, as it's described there in the Belhaven, construct channelization, upgrade signing and marking, analyze intersection lighting, conduct tree removal, and then what issues that would improve or address. In this case, intersection lighting, and throughout the report, is really referring to street lighting, street lamp, street lighting. It's not referring to traffic signals. Those were removed from consideration as not being context sensitive. So just when we think lighting, we're talking about lighting the intersection, street lighting, street lamps kind of a thing. Again, these are all kind of framed around the 3 E's of education, enforcement, and engineering. Again, each intersection has its own analysis. So you can look specifically at one intersection. You can look at the summary table that then walks you across all the various recommendations. It did look at geometric improvements and analyze their utility and where they might be applied. And as I said, some of the recommendations apply throughout the corridor, like the vegetation management at the intersections. Whereas in other cases, there's specific treatments for individual intersections. There are no pedestrian bridges proposed in the study. That was one item I think that was considered, but we dismissed. So there's not that kind of recommendation out of this study. The other thing that we received a fair amount of comment in that is worth noting is about speed camera enforcement. I'd say the public sentiment on speed cameras was pretty mixed, 50-50 split-ish, more or less. Those that are for it and those that are not for it. I think one of the things to think about in the way we try to approach this is it's not a binary choice. It's not one thing or another. It's trying to think of a suite of treatments that would bring about traffic calming measures to achieve the desired conditions for a historic parkway. Our colleagues at the U.S. Park Police would be the primary group responsible for any kind of camera enforcement. But I want to give you a few data points that are maybe worth noting. One is the Park Service, from a standpoint of deploying any kind of camera system, the financial burden is on the Park Service. So we don't receive any revenues off the citations that we write. It's not a revenue generating program. Those funds go to the Treasury, Department of Treasury at large. They don't come back to our organization. So we wouldn't engage in a camera scheme because of a revenue generating or self-sustaining model. That's not a tool that's available to us. Second thing I might note is a lot of this, the hardware and software for this technology is pretty much industry standard. It's the data management that becomes a bigger issue, which we don't have in the Park Service at this time, this kind of technology in use anywhere that I know of in terms of capturing speed, managing that data, and that kind of a thing. The third thing I would note is for my colleagues with the U.S. Park Police, they have a new chief of police, Pam Smith, was recently selected, and she has shared openly that their initial intention in her first 90 days in office is to roll out a body-worn camera program. And her intention is to do that out of the San Francisco field office first, that in the first 90 days. And with a year, the goal is to have that at all the field office, New York, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C. I bring that to note that they are in this space, but their primary driver in this space now is body-worn camera, not this other technology. And they are two different technologies. But that's where they're currently spending their time and their resources with regard to that kind of technology, camera technology. So again, probably the bigger message here is not whether it should be or shouldn't be present, as how does it complement multiple treatments that could occur up and down the parkway at large. Okay.
Charles, this is Aaron. If I could, just for the sake of the recording and the folks taking notes, the full table that's here highlighted on the slide is available on page 251. So if you want to go directly to this table to see the treatment recommendations for the specific intersections, page 251. Thanks, Charles.
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate that. So again, you can look at the report intersection by intersection, as Aaron just noted. 251, the summary table will get you oriented kind of up and down the entire study area. What are we going to do next?
Is it possible to put the link to the report in the chat?
We will. Indeed, we will, and it'll be part of this presentation as well. So we'll make that available to you. So you can find it in two ways. Michael, thanks for asking that. Michael, the park planning website, which is where we collected the public comments and where we maintain that repository, it's there. It's also, you can find it through a link at our park website, which talks about the study more broadly. So the official documents parked there at the park planning website. Our website is a pointer that will give you a little bit more about the study and a link to the planning website and all the appendices that are there. But we will be sure to put that in the chat box as well.
I can put it in the chat box. These are also hyperlinks, so you should be able just to click on them and it'll take you to the report.
Okay, thanks, Aaron.
Yep.
What do we envision doing in the near term? So one of the things we heard as we started down this study path is that the typical pattern for the federal government, for the Park Service, is to do a study and then go find money and sometime later in the future implement the study. We really try to be intentional here and aligning at least one of our projects with the release of this report. And that is the restriping of the road project. And that is on target to be done this calendar year, which would include implementing the road diet from Tulane Drive to Stratford Lane. So we're taking an opportunity to use the restriping project to implement the road diet, which is one of the traffic calming measures the report identified. We'll also take this project and implement some lane delineators up at Bellevue and Belhaven. These are temporary measures up there, but a way to determine, part of the study revealed the decision-making and the confusion, who's got the right of way kind of at that location. The delineator is an opportunity to see if we implement some, kind of forced driving behaviors. That's what plastic delineators cause you to do. And some additional striping, will we get some desired driving behaviors and driving conditions? If it works, then we'll potentially convert that from temporary or interim to a more permanent feature of the roadway. We'll engage in some special emphasis enforcement activities with our colleagues with the U.S. Park Police. We'll continue our work last year to improve the sight distance at these intersections. We made significant headway in that last year. Thank you, sir. To improve the ability to see, and then of course maintain that, because as you know, the spring growth and summer growth will quickly come back up. But a lot of work went into that last year. We're trying to keep it up and maintain it as well. There are no geometric changes in this project that we're doing this year. If there were going to be future geometric changes, they'd probably require compliance from a National Historic Register or planning. We'll get to that in just one second. There is another associated project in proximity to this one, the Mount Vernon Trail Bridge 12. We're going to talk about that on the next slide, just so you know that it's going on in the same physical space, and there's some overlap there in terms of timing of those projects. We are going to take the study at large, and over the near future, this fiscal year, next fiscal year and on, seek out where we might obtain additional funding to implement other safety measures, engage in planning and compliance where necessary for some of these safety recommendations to see if they're appropriate and context sensitive for the park, if they meet NEPA requirements, if they read the Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act before we implement them, because that's a due diligence requirement that we have. So we do have work ahead of us, but we are really excited that we'll take advantage of the project we have in queue, which we anticipate will get awarded sometime late summer, with work, the striping work to be done by the end of the calendar year to take this opportunity to implement at least one of, if not more than one of, the safety recommendations. We're going to orient you to Mount Vernon Bridge 12 just because of its overlap in schedule with this project. This is already an awarded project with a design build. The graphic here, the red line is existing trail in its route. The green line will reflect the post-construction route of the trail and the new bridge that will go in. That construction is anticipated to start this October and continue till August of 2022. It will affect the road because the road will be used as a partial detour for pedestrians and cyclists. So although we'll implement all these safety, the striping safety measures this year, we're going to have to do some manipulation at this one section near Waynewood Boulevard for the purpose of this temporary project. Not unusual for us to have two projects in the same space. Just want to give you visibility to this because we have your captive audience tonight. We normally do press releases right before we get involved in a closure, but again, we thought it was important for you to have some visibility on this associated project on the Mount Vernon Trail.
This is Pat. Are you referring to the stone bridge? Is that where you are there?
No, ma'am. This is a bridge that's physically on the Mount Vernon Trail. It's the kind of the big descending curve is what it looks and feels like when you're up there. That curved bridge will come out. It'll be aligned in a more straight manner with a new bridge constructed to replace it.
Okay, so you're not talking about the bridge that goes over the parkway. You're talking about a footbridge.
That is correct. Pedestrian and footbridge.
I'm sorry, I was getting the wrong bridge there. Okay.
Nope, you're completely okay.
Charles, if I could jump into down here, almost everybody uniform.
Can I ask you to just hold off on your questions and comments? I got one more slide, and then we'll go all the way into questions and comments. So, that's for visibility, and I'll come back to the bridge question that I think you were addressing. Joe, I don't want to cut you off, but we'll come back to you. So, Aaron has put in the chat box the links to the study. If following today, you've got some follow-on comments you want to provide, there's the superintendent's email address so that you can appropriately reach us. So with that, Erin, since you're a co-host, I'm going to see if you can manage the hand raising and or people who have comments. I'm going to go back to Joe first and then Pat. But Joe, you want to go ahead and ask your question or comment first, sir?
Yeah, thank you, Charles. Pat's somewhat confusion there is because I know it's not the official name, but almost everybody down here calls it the bike trail, and that's all we know it by. The Mount Vernon Trail, or MVT, is a term that we don't use that much. So just so you'll know, when folks go, are you talking about the road, or are you talking about what are you talking about?
Right.
We just call it the bike path since
Fair enough.
1973.
Yeah.
So
I know that's not the official title.
That's okay. So it's bridge 12 on the bike path. That'll make it clean. How's that? Right.
Thanks.
Yeah. I would suggest that one of the reasons it's hard to be a pedestrian on the Mount Vernon Trail is because it's called a bike path.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we try our best to share the trail and whatnot. So Pat, to your comment about the stone bridge, which is the Alexandria Bridge up there, there's two parts to what we will do. One, we will do the current under the restriping. We will restripe in that area. What we're trying to evaluate whether the restriping will change motorist behaviors to not strike the bridge. Now, I'm not talking about buses. The trucks that strike the bridge shouldn't be on the parkway at all. But that's neither here nor there. That's just, it is reality.
If you have someone that can't read and can't see a sign and can't see the height, I don't know how you can correct it.
Well, that's true. I'm going to assume you have a CDL license. You're answered most of that stuff. However, the other thing the study recommended, we're not implementing it at this time, is some kind of advanced warning sign, something that would activate or illuminate with some kind of signal so that an operator of a large vehicle would know to move to the center lane. So the road diet as it's currently designed in this project will have one southbound lane, a center, what will either be a safe haven or turn lane, and two northbound lanes. in order to go under the bridge at that specific location, you can't be in the one southbound lane. You need to move over a lane. So that will be configured to allow for that shift to take place. Otherwise, you would essentially have everybody at risk of striking the bridge that was too tall, right? Or a vehicle that's too tall. So in that place, that striping pattern will shift to make that happen. But the overall road diet is one lane southbound, center turn lane or safe haven island, painted on the road, 2 northbound lanes. Part of this is to address what came up in the study where you need about 8.5 seconds to effectively make a left-hand turn. And you can get 8.5 seconds of distance between 2 cars by implementing a combination of different traffic calming measures. The road diet being one of those, which you're trying to get people to travel at posted speed without altering traffic volume. So the study indicates the traffic volume, the amount of cars that can travel on the road daily, is not changing. We're not at capacity. But if we can lower the speed, it creates those opportunities for a driver to make a left turn. And then they only have to really kind of do like half a left turn, right? They don't have to go across the entire roadway. They could safe haven into the turn lane and then merge into or yield into traffic on the northbound. So that is the intent of the road diet and the recommendation from the study that we would implement. So a little more than just the bridge, but it was a good opportunity to talk about road diet.
Bill Kane had his hand up. Now he's frozen. There he is.
Can I ask a question at this point?
Yes, Bill, go ahead.
First of all, thank you both very much for coming tonight. I appreciate your time and effort and your interest in talking to us about this. Can you talk a little bit about what the report says, if anything, about collaboration with the Fairfax County Police in terms of helping out with enforcement? Does the report address that at all?
I don't think the report addresses that at all, Bill. So I will say this to my colleagues with the Fairfax County. They're always helpful in a time of need. I think as a matter of proactive law enforcement, that's not their primary jurisdiction. And I think they're trying to balance their workload to serve their constituents, not necessarily on the parkway.
Charles, if I could, they were also part of the process through Supervisor Stork's office. They participated in multiple stakeholder meetings. So they've been engaged, Fairfax County Police have been engaged in this planning effort to date.
Yeah, again, we've never, we consistently always, and I put in a positive, receive support for them if there's crashes, if there's a need for emergency assistance. But the allocation of their resources outside their district or beat configuration onto the parkway, we have not made any successful progress in that. And that's not unique to South County. We have that in other areas of the county as well.
Hey, Charles, Ron McCallum has his hand raised.
Mm-hmm.
Ron, you're muted. Ron, you need to unmute yourself.
Mute.
There you go.
Unmute.
There you go.
Maybe I missed something, but what about adjusting the speed limit downward on the parkway and then enforcing it?
So the problem is not the posted speed. So there's a lot of speed data in the report, which shows what the median and average speed people are traveling at. So there's a little bit of an artificial construct here, Ron. I'm not an engineer, but I'll try my best, which is people will generally drive the road, what the road will tolerate, i.e. the design of the road, the traffic conditions of the road. When you artificially post the speed limit too low, you're not actually going to get lower speeds. You're just going to get a bigger difference between the posted speed and the speed people are going. So we already have that condition on the parkway. Posted speed's 45 miles an hour. You can see the study. There's a big chart in there that shows what the average speed is and what the median speed is. It's about getting people to travel the posted speed limit. And we can do that not through enforcement being one tool, but not the only tool in the toolbox. Look at a complementary set of resources to do traffic calming. The road diet being one example of that. Other things could be available to us as well. So enforcement is a piece of it. It's not a end all be all solution. So dropping the speed limit is not necessarily going to change causing people to go slower.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. But what about the enforcement angle? I seem to recall from one of our meetings that somebody said that if you pass one parked policeman on the South Parkway, you're free to go any speed you want because there's not going to be anybody else there. Is that true?
Well,
You don't want to admit it.
I don't dictate who sits where when they're enforcing speed limits, but you can observe human behavior yourself on the roadway, right? So there's so much technology out there. There's ways, there's all these gizmos, gadgets, and devices. People are already, it used to be the olden days, you had to flash your high beams to tell everybody where the trooper was at. You don't need to flash your high beams anymore. You got all kinds of places where you can find it. So is that a true statement? No, I don't think that's a true statement. But we don't have a U.S. Park police officer sitting at every intersection either, right? So it is staffing dependent in terms of where they deploy and how they deploy.
Thank you.
Aaron?
Charles, there's some activity in the chat here, so I'm going to just read a comment by Kathleen. This may be on the scope of the study, but can there be mobile signboards in the winter reminding motorists to lower their high beams as required by law?
So it's not outside the scope of the study. It fits within education. We have thought about using variable message boards. We don't put them up permanently, but variable message boards to do some strategic messaging for lowering the speeds. We don't see high beams as an issue that we would enforce. So although I appreciate the suggestion, I don't think that's how we would use it relative to what the study identified as some of our other higher priorities.
The second one in chat. Oh, I'm sorry, there's a number of hands up, so we'll come back to the hands. Let me just get through some of these chat. Two more, please.
Sure.
What is the plan to make the bus stop safely accessible?
So I think our concern, I think we're talking about the 11Y route. You all have probably a better handle on this than I. I think there's some question about whether the 11Y route is going to be a serviceable route given the constraints, financial constraints. That said, there are no specific treatments for the bus stops. There are, within the broader context of the study, the issue of potentially pedestrian crossings with safe havens. I want to make sure that you understand any kind of discussion about crosswalks for pedestrians has to come with other treatments. That the data out there is pretty good about that.
I'm going to stop you there because I think you're going to touch on what the next question is asking as you get into that. So there doesn't appear to be recommendations for pedestrian/bicycle crossing safety improvements to Bellevue or Bellhaven intersections. These two locations have the #1 and #3 top crashes according to the study. Signage and paint tend not to help with safety of people walking/biking. A road diet at these locations would allow for refuge islands.
There's a lot there. I'll try to unpack what I can, and if I miss the mark, somebody can prompt me. At that place, it's already there are islands already there. So a road diet is probably not the right treatment for a place where there's already a median. When we talk in this study and we talk about implementation of safety measures related to pedestrians or crosswalks, you'll see treatments like rapid flashing beacons. It cannot be done by itself. It has to be done really with other layered safety measures. This goes back to the earlier comment about speeds and speed limits. The data is pretty clear from the study and the public meetings we did that talk about the lethality of pedestrian car collisions and what speed that occurs at. You got to really kind of lower speeds to then think about how you would integrate pedestrians in that. So your comment is understood, and it is in the safety study talking about this kind of layered or combined effect relative to pedestrians. Simply going out and striping a pedestrian crosswalk doesn't in and of itself solve a problem. And that's kind of what the study alludes to.
All right, so I saw a few hands go up. That's currently all the questions. Michael Vogler, sir, mic is yours.
Thanks so much. Yeah, and thanks for allowing me to join here. I live, I've been in the community now for 6.5, almost 7 years. We live here off of Stratford Lane, and we look at the Parkway. And so this is especially personal to me, that the Riverside Park area is, it's very dangerous. You have a lot of people parking in Riverside Park, a lot of people crossing the street. So do you believe that the road diet, do you have hard numbers that say that by implementing road diet is going to slow down cars by X amount of miles per hour? And will that reduce the noise? That's one question. The other one is on messaging boards. I don't see a lot of messaging boards down here on the southern end near Mount Vernon about people to slow down or whatnot. Is that going to be an investment that the National Park Service undertakes? And is that a strategy moving forward?
Okay, so I'm going to try to hit those the best of my ability here. So to the issue of to what degree do these safety measures have an effect? All the safety measures proposed have behind them evidence of effectiveness. So I don't know that it's in the study. It might take me a day or so to find it, but there is a transportation website, I want to say it's Federal Highways, that lists every one of these safety measures and does the quantitative and qualitative analysis to say, when you implement this kind of traffic calming measure, this is the percent, I think it's the percentage, is what it's measured in, effectiveness. And so it is well established in the industry, well established in the literature. But did we do it at this location or on this parkway? We didn't do that type of crosswalk, if you will. But every treatment has this evidence to support it behind it. I say that with pretty high confidence. You know, I can't say it with absolute certainty, but I say it with high confidence. As to noise, so noise is a product of a couple of different things: road design, concrete, paving, groove marks, etc. So in rate and with speed travel, there are some safety enhancements that are proposed that will add noise, not take away noise. Mumble strips, those kinds of things, which, you know, they're the da-da-da-da-da sound that when you drive over them would increase noise because they're designed to do that. They're designed to create a vibration. They're designed to create a noise to alert the driver that they're drifting in their lane of travel and make a correction, right? So there are recommendations in the study that don't absolutely answer your question, making things quieter or less noisy. They would do just the opposite. And how you would implement them and whether you would do them continuously or discontinuously are kind of design decisions. I don't have answers to that. On the message boards, so I think two things. Let me step back from message boards specifically, but then I'll come back to it. I think from a parkway aesthetic, one of the things we think about is signing, and sign clutter, right? So the part of a road in a park, part of the character of a road that's on the National Register of Historic Places is to create this recreational driving opportunity that is, and it's, if you go back way actually to the creation of the Mount Vernon Highway, one of the biggest criticisms was signing, that it looked all signed out, and that was not an aesthetic that was desirable. So we try to balance fixed signs and mobile signs. So we do move the message boards around, the variable message boards, because they have mobility to them. And when we think about fixed signing, we think about what's on the sign and how many of them there are, right? So signing is an element that we do consider. To the issue of your deployment, where we put them, we probably could be a little more attentive to that down there in the south end. I take that comment and we'll make note of it. So, okay.
John Reiser, I saw your hand next, sir. Sorry if
Yes. I know the issue of signing is very difficult, and we do not want the parkway cluttered with excessive signage. But there is one sign approaching Morningside Lane from the going north that says, "Keep right except when passing." And there is no equivalent sign going north, but that's the only sign that I've seen in many years on the parkway. And I'm just wondering, what is the policy about people driving in the left of the two lanes for miles and miles and miles? Now, of course, I was always taught that except when passing, you always kept to the right. But so many drivers stay on the left lane and they go the whole length of the parkway and in the left lane. And I just wondered what the enforcement policy, the legal ramifications of keeping right except when passing. And maybe it would be nice to have another equivalent sign headed north on the Morningside intersection. If there is one as you go south, and I think that's the only one on the parkway that I've ever seen.
Yeah, so somebody can help me here. Is there one in the northbound lane just before the Alexandria Bridge, somewhere around? I'm inclined to think somewhere around Waynewood, somewhere there. I think there is one, but neither here nor there. I think one for your issue for southbound, with the implementation of the road diet, the sign will no longer be there because you won't have 2 lanes to travel and you'll have one. As a matter of policy, it's really the law, right? So generally the law states slower vehicles stay to the right. Is a courtesy to pass on the left, but there's not a policy. We follow the Commonwealth of Virginia's traffic law, so that's what would apply, sir.
Thank you.
I would like to have a question, please.
Excuse me if I may. This has been great, but I think we're getting deeply into the woods and we don't need to get this deep down tonight. If I heard Charles right and Aaron, they would be willing to come back with maybe some more details as we work through this. So we don't have to beat them up completely tonight. We can save some punches for another night. And if that's the case, and I see Charles and Aaron both laughing, so I guess that's true. Why don't we thank them for their presentation as it was this evening, because I know I learned, but now we need to do some study by going to the site and maybe come back with some particulars and all in a month or two. What do you think, Charles and Aaron?
Yeah, so we have, that is an open invitation. We will come back. We think coming back in a month or two is a great schedule. You know, and how we maybe reach not only this audience, but if we give the opportunity to expand it into the community, more participants, we can think about the technology there. But yes, and obviously your ability to, prior to that, kind of say, here's some topics we definitely want to talk about. So that way we hit the things that are important to you and the Citizens Association. But we knew there's a lot here. We knew people are also very interested, in some cases, the Parkway at large, in some cases, a more specific or narrower focus, more proximate to where they live. That's perfectly fine. So there's some time to digest this. I do want to note one comment in there from Jeff about hiring a full-time trail manager. We did about a year ago. Steve's a phenomenal supervisor. We are heavily dependent upon volunteer labor to make the bike path, or any name you want to give it, work. And our friends at Mount Vernon Trail are one of those partner groups we rely upon. But anywhere up and down the whole Parkway, any of our trails really depend on volunteer work. We use the Potomac Heritage Trail, the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club, Friends of Mount Vernon Trail. So it's a volunteer intensive activity, even with a trail supervisor. I just got to give a shout out to him because the question came. But yeah, I'll turn it back to you, Pete. We're at your disposal. We'll work with you to come back on another night for sure.
So if it's all right with everybody, I'm going to quit recording.
For this tutorial. If you want to sort a list